In Amos 4:13, Amos the prophet revealed that the God of Israel formeth the mountains, and the English word formeth in Amos 4:13 was translated from the Hebrew word yatsar, Strong's 3335, which is clearly an appropriate word for referring to God gradually forming mountains from pre-existing matter, as in level ground. All geologists know that mountains form in the way that is revealed in Amos 4:13. The Koran, chapter 31, verse 10, claims that Allah cast mountains onto planet Earth, and the Koran, chapter 21, verse 31, claims that Allah set mountains onto planet Earth. However, all geologists know that mountains were not cast or set onto planet Earth. The Koran, chapter 21, verse 31, and chapter 31, verse 10, claim that Allah placed mountains on earth in order to prevent the earth from shaking. However, earthquakes do occur in mountainous areas. According to one knee-jerk interpretation, whoever wrote the Koran can appear to have been partially correct regarding mountains and the shaking of earth, but even that is just a knee-jerk interpretation. If mountains do absorb some amount of energy during an earthquake, for instance, that does not mean that the Koran is actually correct. Countless people can look at mountains and realize that 1,400 years ago, somebody could have figured that mountains are so heavy that they absorb energy during earthquakes. That is not divine given prophecy. That is simple logic. Do not think that the Quran was written by a complete idiot. The Quran, chapter 78, verse 7, claims that mountains are like tent pegs, stakes, that have been inserted into the surface of planet Earth. However, mountains were not inserted into the surface of planet Earth, as the Quran indicates. But Amos 4:13 reveals what actually happened. The God of Israel forms mountains in situ, on site, and God forms mountains from pre-existing matter. Amos 4:13 is the truth. It is Geology 101. And there is more in the Holy Bible. Geologists know that while mountains gradually grow, they actually sink downwards towards Earth's mantle. Just listen to Proverbs 8:25 in Young's literal translation. Before mountains were sunk. That is what the Holy Bible revealed approximately 3,000 years ago. And once again, that is Geology 101 in the Holy Bible. Now, consider the fact that mountains have roots. Geologists know that mountains have roots. And guess what? Mountain roots are explicitly referenced in Job chapter 28, verse 9. That reference to mountain roots was made approximately 3,000 years ago. And Jonah chapter 2, verse 6, in several Bible translations, references the roots of the mountains. The Holy Bible is correct. Some people claim that when the Quran, chapter 78, verse 7, compared mountains to pegs, the Quran thereby effectively referenced the fact that mountains have roots. However, remember that the Quran, chapter 31, verse 10, claims that Allah cast mountains onto planet Earth. Consequently, even if mountains in the Quran, chapter 78, verse 7, might seem to have some sort of roots, as in the lower tips of pegs, the Quran claims that mountains were cast onto Earth, and that is not how mountains came to exist on planet Earth. And remember the fact that Amos 4:13 reveals that the Lord God forms mountains in situ, from pre-existing matter. That is Geology 101 in the Holy Bible. Amos wrote Amos 4:13 in approximately 760 BC. Mountains were not cast or gently set onto planet Earth. God forms mountains in situ, on site. Now, let's use this diagram and discuss what the Holy Bible reveals about mountains and what the Koran claims about mountains. This is a cutaway view of strata that are below level ground, and so is this. And this is a cutaway view of strata that are inside of this mountain. God forms mountains by forming them from pre-existing matter. God takes a section of level ground and gradually forms it into a mountain like this. And notice how the strata in this cutaway view of this mountain correspond to the adjacent strata in the level ground right here and over here. The internal strata of this mountain naturally blend in with these adjacent strata. This mountain was formed in situ, on site. At one time, these internal strata were under level ground, like this. And then God formed that level ground into this mountain. This blue stratum is a Cambrian stratum, and it contains Cambrian fossils. They are about 500 million years old. This red stratum is a Jurassic stratum, and it contains Jurassic fossils. They are about 150 million to 200 million years old. And this green stratum is a Miocene stratum, and it contains Miocene fossils. They range in age from 5 million to 23 million years old. When you study what the Quran says about the origin of mountains, and when you study mountains on planet Earth, here is what would have to have happened for the Quran to be correct. God would have made this mountain somewhere off-site, perhaps in heaven or perhaps somewhere nearby, before casting it down, or perhaps gently setting it down onto planet Earth. Before putting this mountain onto planet Earth, God would have placed this Cambrian stratum inside of this mountain. Radio dating eventually would indicate that it was posited approximately 500 million years ago, and God would have, for whatever reason, placed Cambrian fossils into this Cambrian stratum. Radio dating eventually would indicate that they were approximately 500 million years old. And before putting this mountain onto Earth, God would have placed this red Jurassic stratum into this mountain. Radio dating would eventually indicate that it was posited 150 million to 200 million years ago, and God would have, for whatever reason, placed Jurassic fossils into that Jurassic stratum. Radio dating would eventually indicate that they were 150 million to 200 million years old. And before putting this mountain onto planet Earth, God would have placed this green Miocene stratum into this mountain. Radio dating would eventually indicate that it was posited 5 million to 23 million years ago. And God would have, for whatever reason, placed Miocene fossils into this Miocene stratum. Radio dating would eventually indicate that they were 5 million to 23 million years old. Then, after making this mountain somewhere, God would have cast it down to Earth. Of course, this mountain would have disintegrated upon impact, perhaps somewhat like an asteroid that impacts the Earth, and the impact would have created some sort some sort of impact crater, and the impact may have produced ejecta to some extent. That's not Geology 101. But suppose that God gently set this mountain down right about here. At this point, simply be cognizant that none of this is making any sense, not in terms of serious geology apologetics in the Koran. The only sound conclusion that can be drawn is that the Quran is incorrect. Just a moment. Okay, let's suppose Allah set this mountain down about right here onto planet Earth. Notice that the Quran mountain's internal strata would not have naturally blended in with this adjacent strata. See how the Quran mountain's internal strata do not blend in with these adjacent strata the way that the real mountain's internal strata naturally blend in with adjacent strata under level ground. This is a real mountain. It's an Amos 4:13 mountain, a Geology 101 mountain, a Bible mountain. It makes perfect sense. It's the truth. The Quran mountain is not like any mountain on planet Earth, and any honest geologist can confirm that fact. The Holy Bible reveals that God forms mountains from pre-existing matter, in situ, on site. That is Geology 101 in the Holy Bible. The Holy Bible reveals that mountains sink downwards towards Earth's mantle. That is Geology 101 in the Holy Bible. And the Holy Bible reveals that mountains have roots. That is Geology 101 in the Holy Bible. Incidentally, after studying Amos 4:13, you should study Amos 5:8. Amos 5:8 reveals that planet Earth rotates. The Holy Bible was the first source to reveal that planet Earth rotates. See my video, the Bible was the first source to reveal that Earth rotates? Also, Amos 5:8 indicates that God is currently making stars in the Orion Nebula. Read the description box of my video. The Bible was the first source to reveal that Earth rotates. Amos wrote Amos 4:13 and Amos 5:8 in approximately 760 BC. Amos was a prophet of the living God. Jesus Christ is the only begotten Son of the living God and the Messiah of Isaiah 9:6.